he wants to be a messiah. He wants to be the Nye Bevan of net zero.
Ed Miliband has been in the news a lot in recent days because of the looming energy crisis, our ill-preparedness for it, and also the revelation that Ed Miliband was one of the ministers influential in persuading Keir Starmer not to allow America to launch their strikes from our bases. We ran a leader in the magazine last week with the headline, Ed Miliband must go. Perhaps you could elaborate a little on that.
Ed Miliband is one of the two most intelligent people in the cabinet. He's one of the most experienced ministers that they have. He hit the ground running as minister, and he has a formidable grip over his department. All of that sounds great, and it would be great if the policies he was pursuing were sensible. But in fact, the policies he's pursuing are destroying this country's economy, making sure that last of our manufacturing sector is impeding our adoption of artificial intelligence and new technology. And in pursuit, with an almost fundamentalist zeal of making Britain the world's leader in decarbonising our economy, he is in the process destroying our economy. And that's why I felt that it was appropriate that at a time when war in the Middle East was drawing everyone's attention to energy prices and to energy policy, that the Spectator should, as it always has done, be clear about the threats to the country from within.
So in Ed Miliband, you have the uniquely terrible set of circumstances of an actually competent person who's extremely good at enacting terrible ideas.
Yes.
And he's also, I think, important to say, very internally popular within the Labour Party.
Precisely.
Polls suggest, actually, that if he were to be the candidate, he would be the favoured choice to replace Keir Starmer as Labour leader. I'm not convinced that he himself wants to run that gauntlet again, having had a pretty torrid time of it when he was Labour leader last time. But I think it certainly gives him perhaps outsized influence within the party, and he's one of those ministers that has always withstood any kind of reshuffle that's been going on.
He is the safe choice. He is the safe pash for the Labour Party membership, because he was rejected last time round, so he's unlikely to put himself forward again for Labour leader. So it's all right to fantasise about him if you're a Labour Party member. In that sense, he's like a curate in a Barbara Pym novel. He appears to be the perfect husband, but there is no risk of him actually proposing. And why does he appear so perfect? Because he always opposed the Iraq War, because he suffered for Labour by being the leader who was humiliated, because he stuck it out, and then because there is a cause which he defends with intellectual vigour, which is, if you're on the, well, you don't need to be on the left, actually, which can be seen as a noble cause, and a noble cause which he underpins with, the skill of an Oxford PPE graduate in using economic arguments which carry you only so far, but carry you far enough to outwit most interviewers.
I would say there was and remains something quite tasteless about the way that Ed Miliband made the case for non-intervention. It was incredibly self-aggrandising. To me, the decision of whatever you do is going to be very painful for some people. It's a case of, do the potential downside outweigh the gains? That does not mean that it should be an opportunity for the leader at the time to kind of self-aggrandise. I remember they cheered him as he came back to the PLP after voting down the strikes. It was all about Syria, me. So, sorry, I should have explained in more detail what I was talking about. And you almost wonder if, having got a little high on his own supply last time, he therefore feels emboldened to say to Keir Starmer, we can't even let America use these bases.
I think that's true. But I think that his intervention at the National Security Council to say, hold on a moment, let's not be an unquestioning ally of America, I think in its own terms, while I disagree with him, I think is
reasonable.
It's reasonable.
Yes.
It's reasonable. But you draw attention to the most significant thing about his non-interventionism, which is not the policy position, it's the self-aggrandizing element. I remember talking to someone who had served alongside Ed Miliband in government, and I said, what really drives him? And this person said, he wants to be a messiah. The individual concerned didn't then say, but he's actually just
Very
a naughty
naughty
boy. But he said that what Ed Miliband would love is to have, as Jeremy Corbyn did, everyone at Glastonbury chanting his name. He wants to be a moral leader as much as he wants to be a national leader. And he wants to be the Nye Bevan of net zero. And in the same way as Aneurin Bevan has this hallowed place in Labour mythology as the founder of the National Health Service, Ed Miliband wants to be remembered as the person who banished the wickedness of fossil fuels from our economy and took us to a wind and solar-powered nirvana. Ed Miliband believes his own propaganda. He believes that this would actually make the country energy secure, but what he really wants to do is to be remembered as the Messiah whom Saint Greta foresaw the arrival of.
Well, in the same way that Tony Blair said that it was speaking to God that prompted him to engage in Iraq. I think there is a messianic quality to Ed Miliband for sure, but where it really begins to unravel is in the manifest insanity of what he's arguing for. We've not reached a place where we can divest ourselves of fossil fuels. All that we've done is we now, I think, import between about 45% of our natural gas now comes from Norway, small amount from Qatar, and obviously we get LNG from America. We haven't, it makes no sense to ban your exploration of your own oil and gas resources so long as you're continuing to export from abroad. All that you've done is outsource it and actually add to the emissions because of the cost and the energy of transporting it. So by his own terms, Ed Miliband is not succeeding. It's an example of the pure gesture politics that I think has taken over much of our governing class, like something that you cannot explain to anyone. You cannot steelman this in a way that has any rational reasoning to it at all.
No,
but still they do it.
They still do it. And you have government ministers who will blithely say, when asked about it, they've got one or two lines of defence. They'll say, look, this conflict just proves how you can't rely on oil and gas and how much better it would be if we developed our renewables. But what they very rarely acknowledge is that even on the most optimistic scenario, we will still need oil and gas for many years to come. Secondly, that sometimes the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine, so you need a base load, and that can't be provided just by nuclear power alone. So even in the most optimistic scenario, Ed Miliband is envisaging reliance on gas power for a long time to come. That makes it all the crazier, as you say, that we should be completely reliant on other countries for that supply. When we have oil and gas resources in the North Sea, not to mention, obviously, the prospect of fracking, which I know is controversial, but even if you put fracking aside, in the North Sea, and Norway is exploiting them while we don't.
Yes.
It's literally the case that there is liquid and aerated gold, as it were, beneath our feet and beneath the waves, and yet we deny ourselves the opportunity to take advantage of it. And all the while, our steel, ceramics, and other energy-intensive manufacturing industry, chemicals particularly, suffer.
I mean, this is where I think the vanity and ego point comes in. In the last 10 years, I think the number of well-paid, decent jobs associated with North Sea oil have more than halved.
Yes.
So, real people have lost their sources of income. And despite the promises of Miliband and his friends, they have not been replaced by jobs of equal value in green energy. What's more, there was often, I remember, spoken of around the time that net zero was pushed through the Commons without any vote at the end, in the dying days of Theresa May's time in office. It was said that this would confer a kind of first mover advantage on Britain because we were the first to commit. We would therefore reap the benefits of all this new technology and therefore we would profit from it. I don't really see a great deal of evidence that this has happened because in terms of first mover advantage, we now have some of the highest industrial and domestic energy prices in the world. What rational country would wish to follow our example? Two things.
One of the few people in Parliament who raised concerns about this, not me, was Kemi Badenoch. It is striking that she did at the time. She was ahead of her time in doing so. The second thing is, it is the case that it is possible when there is energy innovation to secure advantage for yourself from it. But most of the advantage in solar and wind has gone to Denmark, China, and to other jurisdictions rather than to UK. The area where we do have a residual strength, the oil and gas sector, can play a part in carbon capture and storage and some of the new technologies. But in order to do so, it needs to continue to make money. What Ed Miliband's policy has done is basically to kill that sector's capacity to adapt to the future.
Last year, for the first time, I think since the 60s, there were no exploratory oil wells were drilled.
Exactly.
And in the same year, I think Norway made £50 billion or thereabouts from extracting its own oil and gas.
Yes, and it is not as though Norway is run by ayatollahs and greedheads. You know, it is one of the most socially democratic, progressive, depending on your point of view, countries in the world. So it's not as though we're comparing ourselves with a petrostate run by J.R. Ewing. It's Norway, which makes it all the more absurd. Now, of course, I have a very small Highland Terrier in this fight because many of the jobs that are in the oil and gas sector are in my home city of Aberdeen. So I'm biased, but I know from the conversations that I have had with people in that sector, including conversations that I had in government, that they recognise that oil and gas will be a diminishing part of the energy mix over time. They completely recognise that. What they want is two things: a staged transition that allows them to continue to be able to take advantage of some of the residual stock out there, but also they want to be able to do so in a way that allows their technology and their capital to be repurposed for new opportunities, including in the world of renewables. But again, their capital is being sacrificed, their flesh is being mortified, as it were, by Ed Miliband. And it's not just that sector that complains. If you talk to people responsible for energy distribution, who have to change the way in which our energy supply operates as well, they also say that they're ready for change, but the pace at which Ed Miliband is demanding that change to meet an almost millennialist deadline. Millenarian, you're right.
Yeah.
Is too difficult for them.
Well, I think this is the point. If you're, for example, a reporter or even a politician who says, you know, I'm actually not against the principle of net zero. I'm not against the world using the best of technology and harnessing the best of global talent to figure out a solution to man-made climate change. That's one thing. No. But then you've got that, which I think is perfectly fair. And then on the other hand, you have Ed Miliband, who says, well, actually, even though we don't have the technology ready to replace it, even though we are continuing to use fossil fuels, for the sake of my own ideological purity, they must not have come from our own resources.
No.
So I think that is actually impossible for anyone to defend so long as we continue to import.
Completely.
And it tells you something very important about the prevailing mindset.
Totally. So in order to feed the world in the future, I'm sure it will be the case that there will be, and some people might shiver at the thought, more lab-grown meat. It will be the case that there will be gene editing of plants in order to increase yield. I think that innovation should be explored. I think there is a potential boon there.
And nuclear as well.
And nuclear.
Advances in nuclear energy.
All of which will be good things. But I wouldn't say, well, because that's on the horizon, let's shoot every cow now and let's uproot our current crops because, they rely too much on fertilizer we can't afford. It would be crazy. I mean, farmers may write in and say that actually this government is already destroying our farming sector, but it would be crazy to destroy our farming sector because of the prospect of technological nirvana around the corner. In the same way, it's mad to give up the energy resources that we have at our feet because of the way in which technology might alter things. And certainly the planet might benefit, but the planet will only benefit if we also have the economic growth to be able to invest in adaptation to new ways of working.
And what people of Ed Miliband's mindset forget is that the universe actually is very agnostic as to where the emissions are coming from.
Totally.
You know, if Britain decides that it will well, actually not necessarily always reduce its supply of fossil fuels, but it will simply offshore it to a different country. But meanwhile, other countries continue to fill their boots. So Matt Ridley makes the interesting point that imagine if Britain were to immiserate itself and actually succeeded in getting to net zero emissions by 2050. And then in 2051, some incredible new technology comes along that has the capacity to achieve this without the hair-shirting debasement that we had to go through. I mean, imagine how stupid that we would feel then.
Well, quite. And I thought one of the things that was very significant is that the holy father of centrist dads, the Pope of moderation, Martin Wolf of the FT, was writing just last week that given that we, the UK, are responsible for only 0.8% of global emissions, surely it would be eccentric for us to believe that we would exercise decisive global leadership by pursuing an energy policy that was self-mortifying. Now, if Martin Wolf is no longer prepared to indulge the benefit of the doubt on your behalf, then you have lost the room. If the Pinkham is no longer prepared to support Miliband's energy policy, then all that remains to him, but it may be enough, is the adulation of Labour's continuing hardcore members.